As I was leaving her office, I asked her, "When do I come back?" And she looked at me and said, "You don't." I wasn't looking for a miracle at this point. I was actually looking for some guidance. And instead, I felt completely dismissed. Hey there, I'm Cam Allen. Welcome back to the Midlife Method. This is not what I had planned to talk about this week, but this is real life happening in real time. My beloved menopausal doctor is retiring. So I want to tell you the story of like what I went through 7.5 years ago, how I found her, and what I'm going to do to find a new one now that she's retiring. But let me take you back because you got to start at the beginning of the story. It was 2018, and I had a complete hysterectomy. A complete hysterectomy means they remove your uterus and your ovaries. And that means I woke up the next day in surgical menopause. Now, if I'm being honest, which I always want to be honest with you, I don't know if I was having perimenopausal symptoms. Most likely. I had gone through a separation and a divorce during this time period, and I was definitely over exercising and under fueling my body. So there was a lot going on, and I wasn't paying attention to how my body was responding to, midlife. At the age of 49, I had this surgery. And part of me knew that this was the wrong decision. In fact, the very week that I had the surgery, I had already started my health coaching classes. I knew I wanted to be a health coach and I knew I wanted to learn more. So I was like in conflict, like, shouldn't I learn more before I have the surgery? And also I had reached my deductible at that for that time of year, and I was having surgery, which meant it was going to be covered. So part of me knew, yeah, this is the right time to do it so I can actually afford it. Looking back, I knew something didn't feel right. I was studying to learn more about health and hormones, and also I was having the surgery which placed me in surgical menopause overnight. I was learning all about hormones, and I know that hormones affect way more than just hot flashes. And by the way, the first 6 months after my hysterectomy were horrible. Hot flashes, mood swings, crying for no reason, no libido, exercise intolerance, weight gain, you name it, dry skin, weird rashes. Like literally, I had it all. There's like 35 known symptoms, and I feel like I had every single one of them. So during this 6 month period, post menopause, post surgery, while I was still in school to become a health coach, I was learning a lot. And I knew in my body that I had a lot of questions and I was very uncomfortable with what was happening. The surgeon that took my uterus and ovaries put me on oral estrogen. And I knew I didn't want to take oral estrogen. I knew enough that it's really hard on your body and it also is hard on your liver. That's not the kind I wanted. And when I asked her about taking progesterone, because I knew that the ratio between estrogen and progesterone was really important, she said, "You don't need progesterone because you don't have a uterus." And I was like, whoa, red light here, because progesterone does more than protect your uterus and get it ready to have a baby. It's also part of like anti anxiety and it helps you sleep, which both of those things were off the chart after my surgery. The thing about it is, like, after it was my post op appointment and she literally says, "I don't come back," I was thinking, like, how do we know this is working? I knew enough about hormones at this time that you have to check on them. You can't just like take a pill forever and expect for everything to be okay. She was dismissing me on oral estrogen with no progesterone and no follow up. I knew I didn't have all the answers, but I knew I had enough that I had to have a different conversation and that I needed a new doctor immediately. That's where my story took a turn. During my classes, I had discovered something called the Dutch test, which is a dried urine test. It stands for dried urine test for comprehensive hormones. What you do is you basically pee on this piece of litmus paper in specific times over 24 hours. Everything's color coded, it's super simple. And then what you do is you let these dried urine samples dry and you mail them away. So, what happens is they're measuring your hormones throughout the day. Things like cortisol is naturally higher in the morning and lower in the evening. Things like melatonin is naturally lower in the morning and higher in the evening. In fact, those two hormones work like on a seesaw. Anyway, so I knew that being on oral estrogen was not what I wanted to do. I had a feeling my estrogen was going to be sky high and my progesterone, because my ovaries were gone, was going to be in the toilet. And I knew that the ratio between those hormones is really important for like health, because, in the back of your mind, you've probably heard, I know I heard, that taking hormones is pro cancer. That's really scary. I'm taking something on purpose that could cause cancer in the future. Now, I knew I wanted to take bioidentical hormones. And I also knew that the Dutch test looked at the whole picture over 24 hours, because literally your hormones change throughout the day. So I'm not saying that everyone needs the Dutch test, but what I am sharing is what helped me. So I knew I wanted to use that form of testing to really find out what was going on, to make sure I was getting rid of estrogen and make sure I wasn't like doing something to cause cancer in the future, right? Like that's important. So what I did is I went to the Dutch website and I found a practitioner in my area that was on the provider list. So that meant I knew that she probably thought holistically about hormones and would be able to look at the whole picture. And that's where I started. So 6 months after my surgery, that search on the internet and making that first appointment helped me find my doctor that I've had for the last 7 years. That's what makes this doctor different. She was going to look at me holistically. She wasn't going to just give me a pill and send me out the door. Anyway, I knew that she would also prescribe, most likely, bioidentical hormones. And I knew enough that I wanted to use the estrogen patch and the oral progesterone pill at night. I knew that. And so once I made my first appointment, I did the Dutch test and we sat down and went over the results. Yes, my estrogen was sky high. Yes, my progesterone was in the toilet. Another part of the Dutch test, it does methylation. Methylation is your body's process of like getting rid of used up hormones. And mine showed that I need extra support, meaning I need to take magnesium and B vitamins and stuff like that. And I also take something called estrogen, basically some herbs, to help make sure I'm clearing the estrogen. So I'm really glad I found her. For the last 7 years, I have been using the estrogen patch and the progesterone pill. And every year, annually, we do the Dutch test and I make sure my hormones are in that good ratio for me. She checks my biofeedback, like how am I feeling? How am I sleeping? What's my mood like? Am I able to gain muscle? All this stuff, the stuff that I do as a health coach. But she looks at it from a doctor's point of view and making sure that my amount of progesterone and estrogen is good for me. It's working for me. And especially, I'm methylating, making sure I'm clearing out the estrogen so it's not quote unquote pro cancer. I felt really good about knowing that she was looking out for me. Once a year, we do the Dutch test and we sit down and we adjust levels. And honestly, I think I've only adjusted my estrogen one time in the last 7 years. And again, it was based on my test results. This is what I do with my doctor. Hormone therapy is considered the most effective treatment for bothersome menopausal symptoms. And really, honestly, your treatment decisions should be individualized and you should find a caretaker or a health practitioner that's on your side that will listen to you. That's really important. So, for the last 7 years, I haven't really thought about the negative 6 months before I found my doctor. I felt like we had a team. Many of the labs I order myself, and then I take the lab reports to her and she does a checkup, all the things. And then I got the letter on Saturday. 7 years I've worked with my doctor and she's retiring. We have a trust. I feel like she is part of my healthcare team. She knows my history. And now we have this retirement announcement. My honest reaction was like, oh, I'm starting over. Like, oh, I don't want to go back to what it was like right when I had my surgery. And I bet many of you are still suffering through your menopausal symptoms. And I'm telling you, the last 7 years has been amazing because I am on bioidentical hormones and I feel really good about where my levels are and I feel confident in my doctor. She doesn't gaslight me. She's actually one of the women early on that told me I should dial back my exercise and do more flowy things like walking. And now that's exactly what I do. And along the way, I have to tell you, I've taught her about strength training because she was more flowy and I was more let's lift weights. And actually, the answer is both. Wouldn't you agree? Hmm. So here I am again looking for another doctor. There are doctors in her practice, and I will feel them out. I am going to let my body be my barometer of truth. There are women in the practice, which was important. When I chose my beloved menopausal doctor, she was older than me, so I knew she had life experience. The doctor that took my ovary and uterus out, she was really young. And it's funny because when I look back on that time period, 2018, and having that surgery, I remember thinking, oh, she's a new doctor. She's going to know all the things about hormones. She's going to know the latest and greatest research. Because, she just went through medical school. Like maybe they're teaching it. And honestly, they're not. That's not my experience. Now, I know in the last 7 years, maybe things have changed. And I'm going to be on the lookout for someone that I feel comfortable with. That's really important. In fact, earlier today, I was on Instagram messaging. She's actually somebody in my group, but I would consider her a friend. And a couple years ago, she went through the transition. She was with a doctor and we were working together. And I was her advocate. Like I helped educate her so she could go advocate for herself to this doctor. And she knew she knew that this wasn't the right doctor for her. She clearly says that, like, I know more than that doctor does, which is maybe possible because that's my life's work right now, knowing enough and helping women, use their voices. But one of the things she said to me on Instagram is don't worry about hurting their feelings. Like, we as women, we want to, make sure everyone's okay and take care of everybody and not hurt anybody's feelings. But if your body, like everything about you is telling you that that is not the right doctor for you, it's okay to find another doctor. And this particular person has found another doctor. It's been a couple years and she's like flourishing. Like I love her new doctor actually tests her hormones on the full moon. Now, how cool is that? Anyway, when you're looking for a new doctor, maybe start at the Dutch test. Who is using the Dutch test in your area? Start there. That's a really good place to find a holistic doctor that's most likely going to see you as a whole person and use bioidentical hormones. Make sure it's someone who stays current on research, someone who is willing to have conversations with you and trust yourself. You feel comfortable talking to that person. Find someone who sees you as like their partner, like a partner in your healthcare. And don't find somebody that rushes out the door. That's why I love going to a functional med doctor because the appointments are 15, 30 minutes long or longer. My doctor does acupuncture too. So I'm there for quite a bit. When you are looking for a new menopausal doctor, ask some good questions. So I've got a list for you. First of all, how much of your practice focuses on menopause? What is your experience in menopause? What hormone therapies do you typically prescribe? How do you monitor the treatment? Like those were no's from my first young doctor. How often do you follow up with patients? Mine's annual. What's your philosophy on individualized care? Like, if I have a concern, like, how can I get a hold of you? My current doctor has like a portal where you can ask questions and either her or someone on her team will answer. So you want to know those things. And most importantly, I just want to say this, you got to feel comfortable. Like all of you needs to feel comfortable. When I think back to 2018, part of me was like, yeah, let's do this. My deductibles met. And part of me is like, not really sure. And at the post-op appointment, it became very clear that I had the wrong doctor. And so I made sure I was going to find the right doctor for me. Because really, honestly, finding the right menopausal doctor is not about finding the perfect doctor. She's going to be part of your healthcare team. It's about finding someone who's willing to walk beside you. And then there's people like me. I'm a menopausal health and fitness coach, which knows like part of my job is to educate women what labs to ask for. What supplements should you be taking? What does that mean when you're looking at your labs? So you have education. So when you go into your doctor's office, you're not gaslit. You have this information not from social media, but actually someone, an expert in the field, and you understand like what you're asking for. For example, if you go in and you have thyroid problems, I just don't want a TSH lab. I want a free T4, a free T3, and a TSH lab. And if you've never had like your antibodies test and you suspect you have any, like Hashimoto's or Graves' disease, which is the autoimmune form, you need to know what to ask for. If they're doing blood work as far as your blood sugar, I don't want just fasting glucose. I want you to ask for your fasting insulin and your A1C. Honestly, A1C is becoming more common, but you may still have to ask for it. That's what I mean. Somebody on your team, enough education so you can go and say, hey, this is what I need. And ask and find out and believe your body if it's a yes or if it's a no. Menopause is not a one-time appointment. It's really a season of life, and I prefer to think that it's the best season of life. And if there's one thing I've learned over the past 7 years, it's having the right person beside you can make all the difference in the world. So tell me in the comments, are you looking for a doctor? Did you find a good doctor? Tell me what's going on in your world. And I'll be telling you, I'll keep you updated on what's happening in mine as I walk through this getting a new doctor. If you found this conversation helpful, please hit subscribe and I'll see you next week.